Welcome back to Small Caps. My name's Kerry Stevenson, and today we are talking to Dr. Chris Gilchrist all the way from Ireland to me here in Australia. Dr. Gilchrist is the Managing Director of South Harz Potash. Now, I called it South Harz because it is actually spelled H-A-R-Z, but Dr. Chris actually said to me it's pronounced Harz, so South Harz Potash. Formerly known as Davenport Resources, the new ASX code is SHP. Dr. Chris Gilchrist, great to see you again. Thank you so much for joining me because I know it's quite early where you are and you're still smiling. First up, let's a quick overview. Two things I want to ask you. First of all, why the change of name? And then give us a brief overview of who are South Harz Potash.
Okay, thank you, Kerry, and nice to speak to you again, and thanks for the opportunity. We chose to change our name to South Harz Potash because we didn't think that the previous name, Davenport Resources, properly represented either the geography or the location of our assets and the commodity that we are dealing with. So we thought that South Harz Potash better represented the company's activities and the geography. We debated this at board level and we decided we should rather do it sooner than later. So now is a good time to do it. It went very smoothly. We're now trading as SHP and no longer as DAV, and shareholders have been advised, and the transition to the new name was approved by ASIC and ASX, and it went very smoothly indeed. We have a new corporate website, southharzpotash.com, and I'd invite investors to have a look at that. And we've also got a new presentation on that website. So exciting times for us.
Now, it is exciting times. Just give us a bit of an overview. All of your projects, clearly potash projects, South Harz, that's part of central Germany. Tell us a little bit about the projects that you do have at the moment and why you're quite excited about the future for South Harz Potash.
Okay, we have got 659 square kilometers under license in the former potash producing region of South Harz in the federal state of Thuringia in central Germany. This used to be part of East Germany before the Iron Curtain came down in the early 1990s. And East Germany was a huge producer of potash until then, producing about 4 million tons per annum, mostly for exports, and it was the single biggest source of foreign exchange to the former East German economy. The entire industry was closed down in the early 90s because the new German government found itself to be the owner of these assets because they formerly had been state-owned. And the West German government tried to sell them, but at the time the potash price was depressed. There was a European oversupply situation, which there no longer is, and there were no takers for those mines. So sadly, the mines were closed. There was a social tragedy took place because of about 40,000 people were released in a short space of time.
Wow.
And South Harz, under the name Davenport Resources, about 3 years ago, heard about the fact that there might have been mining licenses granted to the former state mining company in the late 1980s. And we explored this with the German government and discovered this to be true. We went through a competitive tender process and we acquired 3 large areas and acquired the mining licenses, which is very unique. We also acquired the results of a massive and diligent exploration program that had been conducted in the areas surrounding the former mines. So it's important for listeners to understand that we haven't bought old mines. We actually have virgin potash ground, which is adjacent to the former mines. And until now, we have announced through the ASX over the last 2 years, a total of 5.3 billion tons of resource, which is absolutely massive. So we look forward to developing those resources to the benefit of the shareholders and also to the benefit of the region as a whole.
Chris, I have to ask, I just get you to repeat that for our listeners as well. 5.3 billion tonnes is what you believe is there in potash. This is muriate of potash. What I'm curious to know, and I guess that means that there's this could be a very long life mine, and I'm sure it's early days at the moment, but in terms of that sort of a size, where do you start? Where are you at with it? With the drilling and the permission?
Well, first of all, we have 5.3 billion tonnes of resource containing, on average, 10.6% potassium oxide, which is about 15% potash. So you have to, it's not 5.3 billion tonnes of potash, it's less than 1 billion tonnes. However, given that the global market at the moment is somewhere between 65 and 68 million tonnes per annum, you can well imagine we could supply the planet with all of its potash requirement for some time to come. So we do imagine that the mines that we would develop would have a long life. Within our 3 mining license areas, we have identified the potential for 4 projects. There might be more in due course because we have 2 massive exploration licenses as well. However, within our mining licenses, we think we've got 4 projects. And we've announced previously that we've identified the first project, Ohmgebirge project, to be our spearhead project. And this year we intend to drill 2 holes in Ohmgebirge in order to bring the inferred resource up to the indicated status. And the importance of that is once we reach the indicated status, then ASX regulations will permit us to announce the results of financial studies. Until then, we cannot do that. So the intention is to drill at Ohmgebirge this year and to produce a scoping study by year end for Ohmgebirge. We're looking forward as well to adding further value to the company. And the quickest and cheapest way to do that is to drill the remaining license areas and also bring them up to the measured and indicated category. And we think that that might require an additional 8 holes over the next, say, 18 to 24 months. And that will really launch us from a market cap of, at the moment, about $40 million to, we believe, a significantly higher level because we would be valued at a higher level because we've got an indicated resource. Going back to Ohmgebirge, we recently announced that we have...
Chris, sorry to interrupt you.
Yeah, okay.
You've mentioned that you just need to drill another 8 holes to take you further forward. And then you said 18 to 24 months. Now, my head's going, well, 8 holes, why would it take so long? Can you just go through the process from an investor point of view as to the length of time of doing those holes?
Yeah, well, first of all, they're quite deep holes and they require special environmental permissions and so forth. Each plot of land in the area is owned obviously by a landowner. Most of the land is privately owned. However, typically there's also a farming tenant on the land, and German law requires that we not only get landowner approval to drill, but also we have the approval of the tenant. Yeah. So for each hole, we've got two sets of negotiations that we have to conduct. Thus far at Ohmgebirge, as we announced 2 weeks ago, for one of our holes, we've secured both landowner and tenant permission, and we have subsequently made our application to the local authorities to drill the hole, which is fantastic news. On the second hole we wish to drill, we've got verbal agreement from the landowner, and we're currently in discussions with the tenant, and we expect to wrap that up very shortly. So all going well at Ohmgebirge, we would expect to put some drills on the ground on schedule in July this year, and comfortably by year end to have produced the scoping study that we promised our investors we would produce. So we're quite comfortable that we're pretty well on track with this year's program.
Does it take you mentioned with Ohmgebirge that you've got that first drill hole, you've got landholder and tenant permission, and now you go to the government. Is that a long process, or is that literally almost like ticking a box? It's almost done. I mean, how does that work?
No, the government have to go through certain processes in order to give it permission. But you know, we're drilling only 2 holes. We're not building a mine, so the environmental, for example, the environmental considerations are not high. In fact, we submitted with the drilling permission application, we submitted a biodiversity study to the authorities, and they actually come back and told us it wasn't really required. So we've got a good relationship with them. We talk to them frequently. I actually had a meeting with the Minister for Environment about 2 weeks ago, and I briefed the Minister on progress. The Prime Minister of Thuringia has come out in public and supported what we're trying to do. So through our extensive media campaign, which actually began in January this year, we've actually earned ourselves a lot of friends in the area. We've come up against no resistance, no campaigns to prevent us doing what we're doing. So it's going very well in that respect in terms of our social license in the area. They welcome the idea that we would come along and create employment.
Well,
but of course,
yeah.
all in a responsible manner.
Yeah, and I think one of the things is with these mines being shut down and so many people, I don't know, it's a long time ago, but I'm sure the people of that area would be very pleased to see somebody create jobs and a bit of generate some jobs in that area. What I'd like to know, though, is what is the supply demand like? And we all know that at the moment these days there's a lot of talk around the ESG and the social license, et cetera, which you've just mentioned. Where do they get their potash from at the moment? Because you're right in the center of Europe, which I guess means for trucking and shipping and all that sort of stuff. Do they get it from offshore at the moment? Where are they getting it from? And does it mean that in years to come, this particular mine will tick the boxes when it comes to less of a carbon footprint?
Very good question, Kerry. You're quite right. The European potash demand is somewhere around 7 million tons. Previously, the European demand was met by European production. However, due to the closure of the entire French potash mining industry, due to the closure or the cessation of potash mining at Cleveland Potash in the UK, and the general slowing down of German production, there is about 2.5 million ton shortfall at the moment. Therefore, Europe is a net importer of potash. Now, as they say, potash doesn't travel, and the potash is currently, the requirement is currently brought from places like Israel and Jordan. There's a small amount from Russia, but it is expensive and subject to tariffs. There's also a very small amount from Canada. But the problem is that if you bring potash from Canada, let's say, to Europe, it has to firstly undertake a 2,000-kilometer rail journey to Vancouver from Saskatchewan, and then a 19,000 kilometer sea voyage from Vancouver all the way to Hamburg port. And by the time it's landed in Hamburg, it's cost the planet 300 kilograms of carbon per ton. Whereas we can supply potash into Europe, we believe, for $8 to $10 per ton, with about 8 to 10 kilograms of carbon associated with that. And if we're building long life mines, these things are going to be important. And in future, when people buy a bag of fertilizer, let's say in Europe, it's going to be imprinted on the bag. This costs the planet 300 kilos of carbon. These factors are going to be important, and we have to look to those factors in order to have the very best ESG credentials as we go forward.
Well, that's massive then. So in terms of, because ESG is becoming more and more important as we go on. And are there any competitors close by where you're operating from at the moment, or do you think that what you will be delivering into Europe, there's no one else that's got the type of deposits that you have? I mean, competition I'm looking for, Chris.
Yeah. Well, Kelly Salts is a big German producer. However, their mines have been, many of their mines have been around since the beginning of the 20th century. And at least 2 of their mines will close during the next 10 years. So that gap between production and demand will actually widen. We are initially targeting build a mine at the Ohmgebirge project and starting modestly with a smallish potash volume and easing that into the market over the course of time. However, ultimately, I can see us having at least 4 large mines in the area and becoming the dominant European supplier of choice.
Fantastic. I have to, we're running out of time. I want to ask you a couple more questions. First up, you have a new CFO who I believe is Andrew Robertson, based in the UK. What was the reasoning behind that and what's his background?
Okay, that's quite simple. Andrew is an experienced CFO who has experience on the Toronto markets and in the London markets. And he has spent a lot of time in the natural resources sector, and he's got a huge network of contacts and so forth. So he is excellent in terms of his experience and background. He's a certified chartered accountant, as you can well imagine. And he's been with us about 3 weeks. He was the subject of a long and diligent search. We interviewed numerous candidates, but we wanted to make sure we had the right person on board, and we're delighted to welcome Andrew to the team. He's already making an impact in the way he intends to report our finances, the way he intends to incorporate business modeling approach to our strategic plans and such like. So we're very delighted with Andrew coming on board. The reason why we wanted to appoint a European CFO is because we're moving gradually the centre of gravity of the company from Australia to Europe, where our assets are located. However, we're not going to leave our Australian investors behind. They've been very supportive of us, and we will continue to retain our ASX listing and to service our investors and shareholders in Australia.
That's good to hear, but I have to ask this question. Given that things are happening over there, will you do a dual listing at some point in the future? Is that part of the plan?
It's nothing the board has yet approved, but I can tell you it's been discussed, and I think it's an inevitability. But it probably would be a dual listing because we still have an Australian identity, and we've got a lot of supporters in Australia. So it's something we have discussed, but not yet made any decisions upon.
Okay. Now, I often tell everybody out there in listener land that it's all about the management and do they have skin in the game? Dr. Gilchrist, I have to ask you, I mean, because we've spoken in the past, and what I do like about what you do is you really do genuinely care for shareholders and you genuinely care for shareholder value. Now, do you have skin in the game? And how are you seeing where you're going to create the shareholder value?
Okay, well, it's a question you know the answer to already because it was announced last week that I had invested further in the company. So I've got close to about 4 million shares already in the company. I have to point out that each share I have in the company I've bought with my own money. I've had no freebies, etc. They're all bought by me. I've also volunteered a salary cut as well. And my philosophy is if shareholders don't make money, then I too don't deserve to make money. So I'm right in the same pot as the shareholders, and shareholders have to rest assured that I'm working for them and I'm alongside them in that respect. So I put my own money at risk, and I'm taking less money from the company in order to manage the company. So these are my signals, my messages to the shareholders, and hopefully the shareholders regard that as a positive sign. I sincerely believe in our future. I believe that shareholders are all going to see a considerable value increase as we go forward, and I'm going to take that journey with them also.
That is brilliant to hear. Brilliant to hear. Now, last comment from you. For those people that are listening but are not yet shareholders of SHP, why do you think now is a good time for them to sit up, take notice, and get involved and become shareholders?
Simply, Kerry, because we're grossly undervalued at the moment. We've got inferred resources. We are going to elevate those to the measured and indicated category. That will make the analysts take a different approach to our valuation. And I expect once the analysts do that, then the market will follow. And from what I've calculated and what I expect, they are going to enjoy a significant uplift. So for those who are not on board, then get on board right now, because we're still cheap.
Very good to hear. Lots of news flow coming up. The rest of this year, you're going to be a very busy man, but I congratulate you on that, because it is tricky. Landowners and tenants, you've got the permission, you're underway. Lots of news flow to come up. Ladies and gentlemen, as Chris said earlier, go to harzpotash.com. There is an investor presentation there. The ASX code, as I said before, is SHP. Watch this space. Dr. Chris Gilchrist, thank you so much for joining us on Small Caps today.
Thank you, Kerry. It's always a pleasure.